could and stalked them just a little bit at conventions and things, and eventually managed to get an editor at Tor to read one of my books, and they bought it, and I ended up at Tor because of Robert Jordan. That was you don't go anywhere else. My agent actually, when I got this offer, I called up an agent that I'd been working with, and he picked me up immediately because I already had an offer in hand. He's like, oh, well, that's free money. And he said to me, you know, now that you've got one offer, let's go to some other publishers and see if we can get them bidding and things. And I said, no. We're at Tor already. We don't leave. You don't go somewhere else. You don't leave Tor and take a step down. And so no. His job, I didn't fire him. His job is to try and get me to make as much money as possible. That's what an agent does. But my job on the other side is to sometimes say, you know what, there are things that are worth more than the money. And I wanted to be with Tor, so we didn't actually shop the book. We just said yes. And I considered Robert Jordan a mentor in a lot of ways, even though I had never met him. I saw him once at a convention. About from this distance to the back row back there was where I saw him, and I was too chicken to go talk to him. But during the years when I wanted to break in, I spent many a night reading the series through again and studying them. I actually built outlines out of his books, trying to figure out how he plotted. I tore apart his sentences to try and figure out how he was making sentences. I realized that my creative writing professors, bless their hearts, were actually going to teach me how to write. They don't really do that. In creative writing programs, they teach you how to explore your inner self and all of this wonderful stuff. They don't actually talk about writing that much in a lot of writing programs. So I learned to write from Robert Jordan. This is getting way longer than it needs to be. Boy, that's not surprising for me, isn't it?
Not complaining.
I'm just, anyway, let's skip forward. 2007, September of 2007, I remember logging onto the internet, as many of us probably did, and discovering that Robert Jordan had passed away. I was shocked. I had been following his blog on Dragonmount. I had read his very optimistic posts and updates and what he had written, and I thought he was going to make it. We all thought he was, because he was so powerfully optimistic that you couldn't help but just believe him when he said these things. And I think that was a part of a force that kept him going so long and helped him succeed, because he was very optimistic. But his time came and he was gone, and a part of my world died. I had been a quiet kid in high school. You know, many of us probably were. I spent a lot of time with my books, and my really good high school buddies were Matt and Perrin and Rand and Egwene. I didn't go to my 10-year high school reunion. I reread The Wheel of Time. You're laughing, but really, I mean, I was one of those. I made friends when I went to college. I have some very good friends from college, but in high school, I was one of these quiet kids who read books, and my really good friends were the people from the books that I read. And on that day when Robert Jordan died, it was like all of a sudden, all of my high school friends had died at the same time. And that was very difficult to accept. And I remember trying to write my thoughts down on the screen, type them out, and having trouble, being unable to do it, just unable to get it out and explain how I thought the world had changed, how, you know, things were different now. This was the greatest fantasy epic of my generation. I didn't grow up reading Tolkien. I grew up reading Robert Jordan, and I liked him better, and I still like him better. To say nothing bad about Tolkien, he's a wonderful writer, but Robert Jordan was better. And yeah, I eventually managed to get my thoughts on page in a generally rambling way, like I do, and posted them on my website. And I thought that was really the end of it. About 3 weeks later, I got up one morning, stumbled downstairs, the bright early hour of noon. This is when I get up. I stay up till 4, I get up at noon. This is what I do. At least it's what I used to do before I had a 2-year-old. I checked my voicemail, which is generally the first thing I do in the mornings. And bleary-eyed, I was just sitting there and I heard a voice on my voicemail, the first message, which was, this is word for word. Hello, Brandon Sanderson. This is Harriet McDougal Rigney, Robert Jordan's widow. I would like you to call me back. There's something I want to talk to you about. Yeah, that's exactly, I mean, I was just sitting there half asleep. And then I was stunned. I actually listened to the message like 3 times. And she also left her phone number as part of that. I had not known anything regarding this. I had not applied for this. I did not know at all that I was even being considered. And so this was a complete shock. I kind of told myself in my head, oh, she's just calling to thank me for the nice things that I wrote, I guess. Would his widow really call me the month after, you know? Anyway, I hurriedly called the number back, and actually Harriet didn't answer. She was out at the time. So then I called my editor, and he didn't answer, which isn't surprising because he actually keeps about the same hours I do, and he was probably asleep. And then I called my agent, who always answers, and he didn't answer. And so nobody was answering the phone. I was in the twilight zone, and I walked upstairs to the bedroom. Most of this day is fixed very permanently in my brain, as you might imagine, and I can remember my wife standing there, you know, doing something. I think she was folding laundry or something, and I looked at her, and I said, Robert Jordan's widow just called me on the phone. And she said, well, what did she say? And I said, it was actually a voicemail, and I can't get a hold of her. I don't know what she wanted, but I'm very scared. My wife, no, really, she says that I was more nervous on that day than I was on our wedding day. There's just a hint of bitterness in her voice when she says that. And I respond, dear, I had months to get ready for the wedding. This was out of nowhere. I eventually got smart and called tour offices, got a hold of Patrick Nielsen Hayden there, and he said to me, in a very sort of self-satisfied tone, yes, it's probably what you think it is. Let me have her call you back. And I was thinking, what is it I think it is, Patrick? And so Harriet called me back, and what she said is, well, we're developing a short list of people that we might be interested in having work on this, and I wanted to find out. Yes, the short list actually only had 1 name on it, but that's how she spoke it very wisely because, you know, she wanted me to sweat. No. She wasn't sure then how many names would be on that list. Anyway, she said, we're developing a short list, and I want to find out before I investigate anyone's works and read their books and do all that work if they would say yes or not. So I just was wondering if you would be interested in completing the Wheel of Time. Yeah. My answer was, I hammed that up, but honestly, I can't remember what I said. It's the part of the day that I can't remember at all. I do remember that the next day I wrote Harriet an email sent care of Tom Doherty, which said, Dear Harriet, I promise I'm not an idiot, even though I sounded like one. Because I could barely stutter out a sentence. But I did get out some sort of yes. I seem to recall that. And then we hung up, and I was left wondering, what did I just do? In fact, I spent that night, I could not sleep because I was terrified of what I had just done. And I tossed and turned a lot that night thinking about what had just happened, and I came to 2 very, very frightening conclusions. The first of which was that I realized that night nobody could write the book that Robert Jordan would have written. In fact, nobody could write as good a book as Robert Jordan would have written. I realized that in a small way, no matter how good a book I wrote, I was setting myself up to fail because I could not replace him. And I still honestly believe that. I believe that the book you're holding cannot by definition be as good as the one he would have written because he should have been here to write it. And that was a very frightening thing to learn, or to realize that